Welcome to Season 4, Episode 22 of the Be Conscious podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Jackie Nuñez. Listen up, because this amazing woman is doing important things for each and every one of us, as well as for our shared planet. Here we go.
Welcome to the Be Conscious podcast, the show that brings you enlightened perspectives on the frequency of money, life's many challenges, and those heavy feelings that may be holding you back from living your best life. And now your host, Dr. Susan Nicholas.
Jackie Nuñez started The Last Plastic Straw in 2011 as a volunteer project for the Save Our Shores in Santa Cruz, California. Her goal was to help educate the public about the absurdity of single-use plastic and the use of the straw as a gateway issue towards eliminating our single-use plastic habit. Since then, Jackie has been relentless in encouraging eateries to stop automatically giving out straws and to spread the straw-free message. She has been a force to help change policy away from single-use plastic pollution. The Last Plastic Straw is now a project of the Plastic Pollution Coalition and a worldwide movement that is supporting other like-minded activists, educating people on the plastic pollution crisis, helping to change habits, demanding better materials, and encouraging a circular system of recovery and use. Featured in the award-winning documentary Straws film, which has been viewed in over 40 countries and translated into 6 different languages to date, she is spreading the message worldwide and is truly an example of acting local and going global. Jackie has been featured on NBC, The Washington Post, and yelled at Fox News. We're going to talk about that. A self-described stacktivist turned activist. We'll have to learn what that means. She is living proof of how one person can make a difference. Jackie, welcome to the Be Conscious podcast. Did I miss anything?
No, that was really thorough. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
It is so exciting to have you here. You know, I have to make a confession, Jackie. Since I met you and I learned about this crusade that you're on to really save our planet, I have been very conscious about my plastics use. And I'll say that prior to meeting you, I was conscientious, I thought, enough, where I stopped using and requesting plastic bags at Target and the grocery store. And I, would bring my own fabric bags with me. I was, very conscientious about plastic bottles where I wouldn't purchase them any longer. I would use, a glass in my house and a reusable water bottle and things like that. But I hadn't thought a whole lot about the straws. And since meeting you and learning about your work and reviewing your website, and I took the pledge and all that stuff, I have been refusing straws. And I just, firstly, I want to thank you, because I think just a little bit of awareness is enough to shift behavior and shift our consciousness. So I want to thank you for helping me with this. But as I think about the work that you're doing, I saw the video with the turtle and the straw. I mean, it evoked so many emotions. I wondered if you could tell us how you came to get into this work. What was that? I don't know. What was that in you that you started this movement?
Yeah, I was just as overwhelmed as everyone else about the problem. Like I said, I call myself a slacktivist or an activist, and the term slacktivist is actually a real thing, and it's a type of activism where you might find something online and you share it in social media, or maybe share it with your friends or something. But that's pretty much it, right? You're not really taking action. You're just kind of passively sharing information and maybe signing a petition here or there. And I
Mm-hmm.
totally identify with that. I was, like I said, I was a river guide, I was kayak guide. All my jobs have been outdoors. Um, I really wasn't political at all. I mean, I voted, but I barely voted. And,
Mm-hmm.
to me, I really felt that, politics was not for the people, and that we were really not, the government really didn't understand as far as like the environment and stuff. And I really wanted to be outside in the environment and, teaching people about just where the places we were and just seeing, how beautiful it was and just being outdoors. And I really enjoyed that. But, in the last, I guess would be 10, 15 years, everywhere I went, like especially when I kayak guided some international trips as well, everywhere I went was trashed, and not only trash, but
Mm.
it was mostly plastic pollution. And I quickly became overwhelmed, but I wasn't really doing much besides maybe volunteering for beach cleanups and things like that. But it wasn't until I got served a drink with a plastic straw in it that I kind of had my last plastic straw moment, when I decided I need to do more. Um, but like I said, I was just almost paralyzed with just the enormous task that it was, this whole
Mm-hmm.
plastic thing. So with volunteering for Save Our Shores, a local organization in Santa Cruz, I actually did their sanctuary steward training program. And what that is I think it was like a 6-week program at the time, um, that we just met like every Wednesday for 6 weeks, and they trained us in all the background about the problem of plastics, right? And we had different speakers come and all that stuff. So I really learned about it, and I was volunteering. So what you do is you owe them 50 hours of volunteer work. And so I was leading beach cleanups and taking people out. And I think that's great, right? I mean, it's really powerful for people to do a beach cleanup and to see some of these everyday items that you use that ends up on our beach. And this is in Santa Cruz, right? Everyone's supposed to be recycling. You're supposed to be, we have a trash service and everything else, and everyone's
Mm-hmm.
pretty conscious, and yet it's showing up at our beaches, and we border the Monterey Bay Marine Sanctuary. Um,
Mm.
so, with that though, I also found that, we would go out after beach cleanups. I have, my friends and some of these people that were like, you would consider, tree huggers, or really, into the environment and really understanding the problem. But yet we'd go out for like a bite to eat or a drink, and we were receiving drinks and with straws in it. And I already had been aware of it through the beach cleanups, saying, oh, wow, this is something that I don't really use on a daily
Right.
basis. I don't need it. So I started refusing it on my own. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but then I started pointing it out to my friends, and I saw how powerful that was. And the moment I drew it to their attention, I'm like, did you not just see what we just picked up? Um, and
Mm-hmm.
I just thought about it more, and I was able to phrase it in a way. I was like, think about it. This straw that maybe last moments in your drink is going to outlive you in generations to come, you know,
In our
beyond your
environment.
lifetime. Yeah. Is that the
Mm.
legacy you want to leave? And so I saw the reactions and the powerful way that just kind of invoked something in people. They're just like, oh my God, like they never thought about it. You think about the straw. To me, the straw is the poster child of useless single-use plastic.
Mm.
Something that most people do not need. Yet
Right.
we go out and we are served it, and we don't think twice about it. We just accept it, right? And literally in front of our noses, and no one's taking stock. But once you do, it's kind of like you can't unsee it, you can't unlearn it, and it doesn't stop at the straw. Um,
Right. It's just
so
the beginning.
yeah, so so basically the awareness started coming more, and come to find out, when I do believe in collective consciousness. I do. There were a lot of organizations, even Plastic Pollution Coalition, who now I'm now a project of. They started in 2009. There are a lot of these groups and these organizations started around this time. Well, when you research the problem, you realize that half of all plastic that ever has been made within the last 10 to 15 years, which is staggering.
Mm.
And so that is why we were seeing so much of it. Well, that is why people were saying, "What is going on? Enough!" And that's why you're seeing things like a banana wrapped in plastic, or so, like a lot of excessive plastic packaging. It's like, industry has been ramping up the plastic production and finding markets for it. and pushing it into our communities and into our grocery shelves and entertainment. So that's where you're seeing all the success of packaging. So in learning about the problem, you see this trajectory and why we're seeing so much of it, because we cannot handle this material. So go back to 2011, when I got served that plastic straw, I was just so overwhelmed. I wanted to turn it off at the tap. I mean, I think beach cleanups are important. It's your last line of defense. It's a great, education, communicational tool, but it really is like a drop in the bucket, right? I mean, the analogy we often give is if you walk into a bathroom and the tub is overflowing, the first thing you do, you don't start mopping the floor. You turn off that tap, right?
Right.
And so that's kind of the analogy you give of beach cleanups or any kind of cleanup. It's like you're mopping the floor, but you're not turning off that tap. So I really wanted to turn off the tap, but I was overwhelmed by it until I got served that plastic straw. That I asked for. I was already aware I was asking for no straw, but I asked for a glass of water, and I didn't think, that it would come with a straw in it, and it did. And I was overlooking the Monterey Bay Marine Sanctuary, and that was really kind of my fed up moment. And I looked down. At the time, we had a drought in California, and we had this program called the Water's Precious campaign, and it was to conserve water. And so that they had restaurants, it was actually a state mandate to have restaurants only serve water upon request. And that was it. That was like, oh my God, I can do the same with straws. I can ask restaurants, because it's nothing off their back. If the least that they did was only give straws upon request, I knew that would be a win-win. That we're not asking them to buy anything different or do anything. They're actually saving money. They're not, I know straws probably aren't a big expense, but my brother owns a restaurant, and I know every penny counts. It's all about profit margins and, food costs and everything. And so I knew that this would kind of be an easy way, but a great way to kind of raise awareness. Like I called it the tipping point issue, or the segue issue into the broader problem, because it really never was about the straw itself. It was about plastic for single use. The straw is just what it's molded into. So I really had a hunch that this would be that gateway issue to the broader problem, to start that conversation, to get that behavior change. Because at the time, too, back in 2011, there was a lot of data coming out about downstream, about what they were finding in the ocean, about how much, they were studying the gyres, how much plastic they were finding in the gyres, and how it was accumulating there. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch has been the one that's most studied in the North Pacific. But the researchers, the scientists, the people that were studying this, I was going to these talks, and they were just pulling their hair out. Like, we need behavior change. We're getting all this data out, but nobody's changing their habits. And I thought, well, this is it. I think the plastic straw is going to be the tipping point issue. I think this is something that's tangible. Anyone can do it. It's nothing off your back to just say no to a plastic straw. And I always base my, whole project that no one sets out to pollute the planet. We're just not aware. And it was just a great awareness tool. I knew kids would take it on, because it's an easy thing. And I knew the kids, once they learned about the problem, that they'd want to, take ownership in this. A lot of kids, they get served these little, plastic cups with the straws in it, and how empowering that is for a kid to say no, right, to something. It's like, I want to save a turtle. And at the time when I started 2011, that whole, that video didn't come out until 2015, with the turtle with the straw stuck up its nose, that went viral. And that basically blew up my campaign, because from that point on, I mean, I call that the straw felt around the world. And that was the last plastic straw for the masses, was to see that video.
Well,
So.
I totally get that. I think what that turtle did for the world was really to show how painful that is to all of us. I mean, I think all of us have a nose and can imagine what that felt like, and that I think that pain reverberated throughout humanity. Even the thought of it was enough, but seeing it was a whole nother thing. And I think it, like you said, impacted our children, and they became advocates and became awakened and aware about this issue.
Yeah. Yeah, I call it you mean the straw, I think, is the poster child for use of single-use plastic, but the turtle is the poster child for um, not only the plastic straw, but plastics in general. I mean, they're finding 100% of necropsies now, turtles have some sort of plastic in their stomachs, whether it be fragments or uh, plastic bags. And with
Wow.
children, kids get it, right? If you say, this is a turtle, what does a turtle eat? Jellyfish. This is a plastic bag. What does that look like in the water? Jellyfish. Well, end of story. They bring their own bag. There's no more explaining. It's adults we've been um, just marketed to and really kind of
Conditioned. Yeah.
conditioned to use all this single use plastic as if it's
Without even thinking about it.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's by design, and that's the thing too. It's not a really necessarily a problem because it's of our individual choices. I mean, we have been marketed this. This is what we've been inundated with. This we need industry to really scale down the production of this material, and I think it's criminal to be using it for single use. The one tagline I used, and actually what I used in Fox News, was plastic never was and never will be disposable. And
Mm.
and that's just, I mean, the earth can't digest plastic. It is not from the earth. It will not go back into the earth is the way it's
Hmm.
intended without a lot of inputs to try to mitigate. We do not have a handle on it. And I think there's a lot of great uses for plastic. It's a wonderful material, but we need to be using it responsibly,
Consciously.
consciously, and be able to reuse it and be able to effectively recycling it, because we're not recycling it. We never have been. But that's another myth that industry has been selling us, that it can be recycled. Um,
Mm.
but it's
Can I?
not. Yeah.
So one of the beach cleanup thing, and you said a couple of things that I wanted to touch on.
Okay.
So I think it was 2 years. No, it was the summer of 2018. So 3 years ago now. Um, my, I went to a family reunion in Bermuda, and it was the first time I'd been on the island in probably 20 plus years. My my father's second wife, my mom's family, she grew up there, and I'd been there as a child, and I thought they just had the most pristine beaches. And in my whole life, it was like the standard bearer of beauty and beaches was my memories of Bermuda as a child, and then as a young adult. So I went back 3 years ago for a family reunion, and I was just taken back about on the trash, the plastics that were were I guess washed up on the beach. And I remember thinking, why wasn't anybody like as alarmed as me? And I asked my aunt, who has lived there her whole life. She's in her early 70s, and she's like, this has been happening. We've been seeing all this wash up. And literally spent my time at the beach picking up plastic and removing it like out of the water and off of the shore into another trash receptacle, not knowing what to do with it, but was just like taken back that this substance is being dumped in the ocean. I think to your point, we think that, we see these receptacles, plastics, bags, bottles, glass here, and we think that it's being reused. But is it true? Is it just being dumped into big pallets into the ocean, and that's the quote unquote recycling of plastic?
Well, there's a few things going on. What I like to tell people is that plastic is derived, like 99.8% of all plastics is basically from oil or gas. The petrochemical
Mhm,
industry is
mhm.
making this, and I like to say it's the feedstock for plastic is the toxic waste byproduct of the petrochemical and gas industry. And so now they've created a market for essentially their toxic waste, and they're,
Mm.
transferring on to us, right? And we're wrapping our food in it, and we're,
Right,
packaging
right.
things, and we're selling it, and we're doing all these things. And so it's being transferred onto us, and we are, and they're telling us, don't litter and recycle. Well, the reality of what they call recycle, I mean, I took a 3-day recycling class in San Francisco at the Ecology Center. And, and in San Francisco, I mean, they are ahead of the curve. They are like curbside composting, and they're doing all these things and really trying to separate the trash to make a viable use of each component of your waste stream. And I went there to really kind of learn about our recycling system and how it works, and really to find out about plastics. Well, on the third day after lunch, we still hadn't even talked about plastic. And I quickly knew why, is because it turned out like how we deal with plastic is we ship it away, and we ship it to all these other, it's all like based on these markets and what they can take back, and what they had to do in the United States. In Europe, there's a lot more separation. In the US, there was really low participation rates if you had to separate it a lot. So they said, okay, let's just combine them. Let's put the glass, the paper, the cardboard, and the plastic together, and then we separate it at these plants. So we were there at the Ecology Center. We visited, one of these, they call them MRFs, and basically it's where they separate it out, and it goes through a process of at least 12 different machines, people hand sorting. They have all these kind of optics and sorters, and it shakes, and then some of the materials go to the surface, others drop down, and they separate, and there's all this stuff, and it stinks to high heaven. It smells toxic there. It's disgusting. We have disgusting, dirty plastic that's just contaminated with all kinds of stuff. And I had to keep reminding myself, like, this isn't a dump. Like, this is supposed to be the stuff that we're shipping off. So we ship off this dirty, nasty, low-grade plastic to these countries. And then we were, at the time, shipping it off to China.
And what was China doing it with it, and why was it receiving it? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, why would they receive?
Well, they had the labor was cheaper. They were going through, they were sorting through it, but it was these, there were people picking through mounds of our plastic waste, and trying to, they're actually really keen on knowing what type of plastic, what kind of resin it is, to be able to pull out the ones that are marketable. And the rest, they just basically will incinerate it or burn it or dump it. And there's a great film called Plastic China. I think it came out in 2016 that kind of really exposes that. People have gone and see it. But since then, China stopped taking our plastic. So that was a big aha moment. That was in 2018. It's interesting that you mentioned that year, because that was a big moment for the work that we did. That's when it really kind of peaked. It peaked all the plastic straw bans at that point. That's when, like, Fox News asked me to come, because all these straw bans were happening. That's when I call it this trifecta. Like, the story of the year was actually exposing the fact that we never really, recycled plastic. When China stopped taking it, it really kind of exposed our whole quote unquote recycling system for plastic. They actually, all the plastic we ever made, they say it's like a 9% recycle rate of plastic, but I say it's even less, because what they're calling recycled is actually downcycled. It's not like you're making a bottle into a bottle. It's not 100% back. And that's a lot of people have in their mind, like it's being recycled back, right? We're reusing that material, but that's not the case. If you think about plastic, it's made out of chemicals, a mix of chemicals, these chemical bonds, and the minute you reheat it and repurpose it, it starts to lose those chemical bonds. So you have to add more virgin plastic. So a lot of times it's a low percentage of any of that plastic that they could take back, with virgin material to make it work. And also, virgin material is quote unquote cheaper than going through the process of trying to recycle it, right? So industry doesn't really like recycled plastic, and they never intended to recycle it in the first place. So when I took this 3-day recycling class, the one thing it gave me hope, when I learned about metals, when metals first came on the scene with the industrial age and everything, I mean, our rivers were, polluted. Our skies were black. It wasn't like they changed their mythology because of the environment. They had all these different, types of formulas, and they had to streamline their processes, because they never thought we would recycle metals either, by the way, because there's so many different formulas of it. But it was when the war happened, for the war effort, they were forced to streamline their processes, their formulas, so that we could take these metals back and be able to repurpose them. Well, if you look at plastic, I feel like they're in that same boat. They've never been really regulated, the industry. And you've got 1 through 7 resin codes, which, by the way, are wrapped in, when you get the bottom of a bottle, for instance, and you see that number, and it's surrounded by the universal symbol for recycling, which we call the chasing arrows, and that the arrows in a triangle, right?
Yes.
Industry claims they never meant to mislead us that actual item is recyclable. They say they're using the universal symbol for recycling symbol to highlight the resin code so that we can look at the resin code and determine whether that's recyclable or not in our community.
So
Now,
basically, we've been duped.
Big time. And right now there's actually a law in the books right now, actually on the governor's desk in California, truth in labeling law. To really, you're not allowed to put a recycling symbol on anything unless it actually truly is recyclable, material. But so what I learned was we have the 1 through 7 resin codes, right? Really, what they take back the most, I think it's like resin code 1 and 2. And it really depends on your community and what they're doing and what the markets are doing at the time. But even that, they're not really truly recycling it. They're downcycling it to like a park bench or a bender board or decking or something. And then end of life of that, it just becomes trash, right? You can't downcycle that again. It's like lost its kind of integrity. And what's happening too is it's polluting in every stage of its existence. So there's really no room or a place for plastics actually in a future circular economy. Because basically what you're doing is it's a toxic transfer. There's a lot of problems with it as it goes through the process, even like say if it becomes a park bench, right? Well, they found that plastic continues to off-gas CO2 into the air.
Right.
It's shedding. It's, so you're adding those toxins. So it's just like, really, is it a viable thing? So I learned you have the 1 through 7 resin codes, but you have 21,000 different variations of that plastic. So they never, what I like to say, my truth to plastic talk is I say, plastic was never made to be recycled because they don't have a streamlined, formula resin codes. And it really depends on what additives. They'll add an additive to harden it, to, make it softer, they're putting scent in it. They're putting colors, and so they're changing all of that whole makeup of it so that it's really not a viable material to take back. And then again, with the whole chemical bonds and everything, it's not really made to do that. But that was never the intention to begin with. They want to continue to have it go one way only, linear. So at a time where we should be making less plastic,
we're making more.
We're making more, and the reason is because we have a glut of fracking fuel. As we get away from fossil fuels, the market, this is the last ditch effort where they're going to be making money, is off of all of this, not only plastic, but low grade, cheap plastic. And they have what we call these cracking plants that crack the ethanol into, cracking the fracking fuel into ethanol to make more plastic. And it's almost a play off of the tobacco industry, like how we started regulating tobacco here. Well, then they're going to now they end up marketing in all these other different like third world countries or whatever to continue those markets. Well, they're really gearing up to sell a lot of this low grade plastic for packaging and everything to these third world countries. So if you look at places like India, Indonesia, there's a lot of these what we call sachets that they're one serving little packets, and a lot of times it's like 3 different materials in there. Like they've got all these different linings of it. So it's really it's a material that's hard to recycle to begin with, right? It's got a lot of different types of plastic and foil and different things in there for the preserving and everything. But they're one serving thing. So you go and get your like laundry detergent. It's a one time use. And they've actually done the math. It might be cheap for someone in one of these countries. Like, okay, I can't afford like a 2-gallon jug of laundry detergent, but I can afford this right now, right? But even by the ounce, it's more expensive than if you were to buy, a
Yeah, of
2-gallon jug.
course.
But so and then this really polluting the environments there, because even in our own systems that's supposed to be so advanced, we can't recycle that packaging, and especially there, they don't have the facilities or
Infrastructure.
anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that doesn't matter. I mean, we are basically it's what we call toxic colonialism. We are just shipping it out to these other countries, and they're having to deal with it. And I mean, people like to point their fingers to these other countries. Like, oh, they don't have the recycling infrastructure. But I argue we don't even have it here either, because we are one of our biggest exporters. We are one of the biggest exporters of
Trash.
trash and plastic waste worldwide.
So, Jackie,
Yes.
um, you're giving us a lot to digest here.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's take a little break. And
Okay.
you said something very early on about I'm not much into politics, but I'm into this plastics things. But that puts you squarely in the political kind of center, right? Because this is about money. It's about oil and gas. It's about an industry that's clinging to its last toxic chemical bond, if you will. And now you're having to fight.
Yes.
It's a political fight. So let's hold on here. We're
Okay.
going to be right back.
Like what you're hearing so far, make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now. How would you describe your relationship with money? Did you ever imagine that your deepest feelings and beliefs about money could be preventing you from acquiring all the wealth that you desire? Click the link below in the show notes to learn more about Dr. Nicholas's highly sought-after Frequency of Money program to positively transform your relationship with money. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back, Jackie. I wanted to go into a couple of things that were said in the last segment. You talked about toxic colonialism. You said a toxic transfer. Basically, we're shipping off our trash. We've been duped into believing that those chasing arrows for the recycle symbol are actually false. That's not recycled. It's just to highlight the resin number. So I think that is a shock to me. And then this idea that this is all about money. This is about oil and gas and about its last stand. Like what can it do as the demand for oil and gas is declining on the planet? And we saw this with a lot of clean coal ads. I remember when the coal industry was on its last leg, they were trying to rebrand it as clean, that it wasn't as toxic as it is. So you spoke a little bit. You said a little hint about being yelled at on Fox News, or that's what they got you on. Can you take us to what you were saying when you were interviewed on Fox News, and what was the rift there? And then maybe take us into this journey now that this impact, like this last straw, this desire to stop this use, to wake up America, to wake up the world. What political realms has it taken you into?
Yeah, I mean, the irony is just so prevalent there, because like I said, I barely voted, and when I decided to kind of stick my neck out and start speaking out on it, I started local, and now it's become pretty global. And I started just riding around on my bicycle and talking to restaurants, whatever. But it quickly became me speaking to our local city council and changing some of our local laws and making it upon request. But also, you can't talk about plastic straws without talking about single-use utensils, water bottles. So again,
Mm-hmm.
with it became a great tool for policy as well. And so a lot of maybe policy on bags or polystyrene that might have been languishing ended up getting another kickstart when you started talking about straws. I even saw politicians who normally were not environmentalists stick their neck into the ring thinking, okay, this is trending. This is going to make me look good. straws upon request. That's not bad. Like, I can do this. This is going to save people money. But they had no idea what they were stepping into now, because people would be like, well, okay, we're going to do this. And like, let's talk about this other stuff. Let's talk about polystyrene. Let's talk about bags. Let's talk about whatever. And it became a big comprehensive thing. So it was a nice little, kickstart into the conversation. I always talked about the plastic straw. Also, even the bad press was good press, because I got a lot of backlash as well. I mean, I don't take it personally. I mean, whatever the issue, got a lot of backlash. And coincidentally, I always knew it would be a movement, just because I saw how people took it on to their own. And that's what I wanted it to be. I just kind of wanted to instigate this and bring it in people's consciousness, because I knew people would own it and take it. And you know your community better than I do, right? So I was providing the tools, making people think and trying to get it out there. But it was amazing what people were doing in their own communities and able to make this move. And I knew that it just wouldn't stop there. So this is, it's funny. Here I am now. I'm the advocacy program, manager for Plastic Pollution Coalition. I'm in all these policy calls. I'm not necessarily writing policy, but helping to, formulate policy and talk about it, and maybe lobby off and on, like on lobby days and stuff. But so it's pretty funny that here I am. But 2018, like I was saying, it was a big year. So story of the year, yes, we're not recycling. I have to say I take pride. The food story of the year had nothing to do with food for the first time. It was plastic straw bans that was really kind of ripping through the country. And then also word of the year which was most, I guess, searched or said, I'm not sure how they determine it, but in Webster's dictionary, I get confused with Webster's and Collins. There were two dictionaries. One was toxic. The other one was single use. And I'm sure toxic was used for more than just plastic straws at that time. There was a lot of toxicity going on there, but interesting. So it was an interesting time. So that's when I got the phone call, or actually Plastic Pollution Coalition got a phone call asking for me and to do an interview on Fox News. And my first reaction was, hell no. I don't want to get yelled at by a bunch of white guys on national television. I see how they do that. Our communications director, to her credit, she had already kind of, researched it a little bit. And she goes, well, it's actually, it's a woman. It is a white woman. I said, let me guess, is she blonde? And she was like,
right. Of course she is. Yeah.
She is. Yeah. But she's got dark roots, And it turned out to be, the woman is Martha McCollum, and she's got a show. Well, my parents are Cuban, and, they're that generation, but they watch Fox News to my disdain and to my horror, and, live in Florida, very conservative, and they watch Fox News all the time. So anyway, our communications director is like, well, think about it. And what had happened was I was coming back. I was in the foothills. I went and visited some friends of mine. They talked me into an extra day up in the foothills where I used to river guide up there, river guiding friends. And my last day with them, we totally hung out by a lake. And I'm glad I spent that extra day. And I was like, minding my own business, coming back into town, coming back into cell phone range when I had these messages. And they were asking me like, well, they want to do this interview this afternoon. I said, oh, so, okay, what do I need to do? Where do I need to go? Because I'm not home yet. I can be. And they go, well, if you can get to San Francisco, to the Fox News studio by, I forget what time it was. I don't know, in the afternoon, like 4:00 or whatever, or somewhere in San Francisco, land somewhere. A car will come pick you up and take you to the studio. So that's what I did. I first phone call is I called my partner, let her know what was going on. And I said, listen, I got to start calling people I know in San Francisco where I could go take a shower and get ready for this. And then of course she went and called my whole family, told my parents, and, anyway, so take shower, got a good friend, happened to be home, said, sure, come on by, took a shower, got ready. A car picked me up. I go to the studio. It's in San Francisco, by the bay, and people are super nice. They've got all these monitors, put makeup on me. I'm sitting there.
Sorry.
I know. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, still kind of not thinking about it too much. And because they said that they want to talk about, some of these bans and stuff that are going on. So I've been involved enough with the politics. Sure, okay, I'll talk about it, right? So I'm sitting there, and the segment before me, they have a little thing in my ear, and I'm listening to it, and these guys are yelling at each other, and all of a sudden I feel my heart rate quicken. My breath starts to get shallow. I'm like, oh God. And I'm thinking to myself, all of a sudden this dread comes over me. Like, what am I doing? Why am I here?
Mm-hmm.
And so I just take a few breaths and close my eyes. And I said this mantra to myself. I'm like, this is not a fight. This is not a fight. I've got truth on my side. And that's what I told myself. And so when they cued me, I opened up my eyes and I'm looking at a red dot, a red light. And they were live feeding me to New York.
Mm-hmm.
And so thank God I couldn't see her. But when it started, all of a sudden, I don't remember at the time, when you're in it, you don't remember what you say or whatever. And I just remembered that I felt like I was getting yelled at the whole time. I didn't know if I even got a word in during it. And honestly, I was just really upset at the end. I'm like, oh my God, that was not an interview. Like, did I even, I was afraid. I was like, well, how did I look? Like, was I rolling my eyes? Was I making faces? Cause it was like all this bat shit crazy stuff was coming through my ears. Just like this lady was just going off. So anyway, saying stuff like, isn't it my right? Isn't my right to use a straw and blah, blah, blah. And then saying all these crazy things. But what I had going for me is that, first of all, I was in the foothills. I didn't know what was going on. What had happened was in Santa Barbara, they had just passed this ordinance or introduced an ordinance for plastic straws. And I guess at the time when they first put it in, and I knew enough with some of these ordinances, when you first put an ordinance in, the process is if it comes in under a certain type of ordinance, like it comes automatically tacked on with a ban or a fee, if you do it, and then they adjust it to what it, whatever it is that you're doing it for, right? But when you first introduce it, it's under something. I'm not even really sure the technicality of it. So I knew that whatever it was that they were going to change it. But at the time when they first introduced it, it had like $1,000 fine if you were to, to not. If you were to serve the straws or whatever, right? So she was going off about like how, what if I'm a waiter, like I'm going to get this fine, like, and I knew like, well, no, like the manager, and I know that it's like 3 strikes and you're out kind of thing. It's not one of these things where they fine you right away. It's it's like if you're a repeat offender, they finally get it. And I knew that it wouldn't be that $1,000 thing. They always adjust it to what the this is straws. They would make it less. So anyway, so I had that in my, I did not react. So let's put it that way. I guess I didn't react to that. I just thought this is a silly line of questioning. And honestly, I ended up having the last word. And so the more calm and relaxed I was, the more batshit crazy she looked. She was kind of losing her mind on the thing when I saw it after the fact. But really, honestly, at the end, I just didn't know how it turned out, what I said, and how it came out. But when I finally saw it again, I have to say, I mean, I was just smiling. I actually got some of my points across, and I got the last word. And yeah, it's actually kind of fun. Thank you. Yeah, it's actually kind of, I'll send you the link. It's kind of fun to watch now. But at the time, I'm like, oh my God. And I don't know. I mean, I told myself never again. I feel like I took one for the team. And, but at the same time, I mean, it makes you think about it too, right? And I saw, I was able to communicate to an audience I normally wouldn't have been able to communicate to, right? And that's a lot of my frustrations too, and why I think the straws are pretty accessible, because I actually ended up having a wide audience to really engage this conversation. And like I was saying, even the bad press was good, because when they were like bashing the plastic straws, they would say like, well, plastic straws are only 0.2% of plastic found in the ocean. What about this? What about that? I'm like, yeah, what about that? Let's talk about that.
Let's talk about that. Exactly.
So it started the conversation, which was amazing, which was the whole intent. And, and it still to this day does that. It still has that lever for people. When I started this, I mean, it was just a hunch I had, and just seeing how people reacted, that I knew it would be this behavior change tool. But then in researching it, it's a field of study by B.J. Fogg, actually a field of study at Stanford, how little habits lead to big habits. And it was based on when they were getting a lot of data off of about diabetes and heart disease and how it's preventable. And so how do you get people to do it? It was little habits changing to big habits. And so there's a whole field of study behind that. So, there's actually not me. I just kind of, intuitively figured it out through my experiences, but that really does kind of back the theory of this behavior change tool. So
can I ask you, Jackie, there's a whole, I think we could do a whole nother podcast episode on changing behavior.
Yes.
And I said very early on that sometimes just the awareness is enough to spark the change.
Yes.
At least, for me, that's enough. But I've already been aware and awakened.
Mm-hmm.
But can I ask you, what is the fight really about? So when you're going into the policy part of it or the political part of it, what is the pushback? Who could argue with you? Like, what's the pushback?
The pushback, I think, well, it's a lot of it. It's a huge lobby, right? So there's all kinds of pushback, and there's a lot of money going into business as usual, right? And really, who benefits are the few and not the many. So the more that they can deflect it and say that, plastic is essential, plastic is needed, plastic is convenient. They're constantly doing. I mean, right now in policy, what we're dealing with right now, like you were talking about how they had like these different, like clean coal and stuff. Well, we're dealing with that right now because now, okay, they've had this myth, right? So oh yeah, now we care, and we get it. We want money to go towards, recycling. We understand recycling's broken, and we want to fix this, but they want to burn it. They want it to go away so they can continue doing it. So they have names like chemical recycling, advanced recycling, waste to energy, all these things, but it's all burning plastic, right? Pyrolysis, whatever, gasification, all these fancy names, and it sounds great. And especially a lot of these, I say predominantly men, that are like, oh yeah, we can fix this, right? Like we can technological fix. But
basically, they're trying to fix the problem in the same state of mind, energy, the same place that it was created, right? It's like it's not anything that's of higher thought or I don't know, perception. It's just like, how do I don't know that we fix anything in the same way that it was created, from the same substrate, energy, beliefs from which it was created.
Right, like that famous Einstein quote: "The same minds that are not, that created are not going to be the same, or the same mindset is not going to be the one that." I forget.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's the same thing. It's the same deflection. It's the same, thing, because they want it to be linear. They want it to go one way only, and they want it to burn and go away, because this is the thing, right? They can't deny it, just like they couldn't really fight the turtle with the straw stuck up its nose. I mean, how do you fight that? Like, that's case in point. I call plastic is the physical embodiment of the climate crisis. It's what you can see, you can touch, you can feel. It's a gross polluter at every stage of its existence, and a contributor to climate change, the climate crisis. So. And and they want it to go away, right? But it's accumulating, and everyone can see it and do it. So it's really this basically kind of a shell game. But I call these technologies, and I'll put that in quotes, or these solutions, either they're false solutions, but I call it's a transfer of pollution to pollutants. And basically, so you're burning it, so now that becomes even more a problem, or a continued problem, or a different type of problem, or it's now a dioxin. You still got those chemicals. It's a transfer, right? So it's a toxic transfer, a chemical transfer into another form, and so it's a problem. It's a mess. Yeah.
Well, let me do a correction for all of our listeners. What we were quoting by Albert Einstein, his
Yes.
quote
Mhm.
states that no problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that it was created.
Yes.
And so I think this is exactly what we're dealing with.
Mhm.
This requires what I consider a paradigm shift in awareness
Mhm.
to change this problem. And from the perspective of the gateway plastic, the straw, I want to share this quote with you and with our audience. It's one of my very favorite quotes from David Mitchell. And it goes like this. It says, "My life amounts to no more than one drop in a limitless ocean. Yet what is any ocean but a multitude of drops?" And so even though this may seem small, that 0.2% of pollution, it matters. It matters because then it raises awareness, it raises consciousness, it ignites the paradigm shift in awareness for us to solve it, to stop it, to solve the problem. But then you have these powers that be, the ones that are losing their foothold. There's a big shift, I believe, in a consciousness and awareness occurring on the planet.
Mhm.
And I think there's this knowing that I can't do this anymore, or my business is not business as usual anymore. I must change. But many of us resist the change. And
Yes.
instead of innovating in the way, or, I think it's very difficult for any person, whether they're an individual, a group, or a corporation, whatever they've aggregate or collected themselves as being, to change. Like we'd rather go down with the ship than change,
Mhm.
because we may require retooling, relearning. It's a paradigm shift in consciousness, and many of us are unwilling to make the shift. Well,
Mhm.
in our very last moments of this interview, Jackie, can you share with our audience the best way to reach you? The resources that you mentioned, I will put into the show notes so they
Okay.
can click from there. But if you'll just tell everyone how they can get involved, what's coming up next, where to reach you on social media handles, etc.
Yeah, you can reach me at I think Instagram and Twitter is at no plastic. No, actually, yeah, no plastic straws. Facebook is the last plastic straw. You can look that up there, and then info at the last plastic straw. You can contact me there. Plasticpollutioncoalition.org. A lot of great resources there. A we have webinars, monthly webinars. You can see past webinars and new webinars. The next one coming up is about climate and plastics. A lot of great subjects where we try to keep it interesting and on the fringes and making those connections of how it impacts us in different ways and really going back to this shift of consciousness. It's also a system shift, right? So we're talking
Mm-hmm.
about design solutions and systems, and I always said that a lot of our problems are going to be solved. It's regional will be the answers to a lot of these problems. So we really kind
Right.
of kind of decentralize it.
Centralize it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Acting local, acting regional, then that can have a great change on the planet. And I also think, Jackie,
Hmm.
there's the cleanup part of it. There's the advocacy. There's the awareness, like letting people know that that doesn't mean recycle, that that's a hoax, that we've been duped, coming like getting, swallowing that big pill. And then
Hmm.
what is the solution? Like on your website, you show a lot of straw alternatives. And as we're in this call, I'm thinking, okay, what can I do? Like I don't buy, when I'm at the convenience store, I'm driving and I stop at the store and everything's in a plastic bottle, that I want to consume. Like what can we do? And I think a part of the shift is more palatable when there is or many solutions. And so I want to thank you for bringing awareness and providing solutions on your website and your webinars and all the work that you're doing.
Yeah, and can I say one last thing too? I mean,
Of
businesses won't
course.
self-regulate, and I think there's a need for regulation, and we do have a federal bill in the books right now called the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act. And you can find out about that. If you look up Break Free from Plastic Pollution, you can find stuff on that act. And we're trying to get more sponsors, contact your legislators, and to really get that. But it's actually a pragmatic, practical federal piece of legislation that has been tried and true, has been proven, right? We're basically putting the components together that have been done on the local and state level. And to be able to have an all-encompassing federal bill that is more comprehensive on plastic, talking about from extraction to waste and all the things in between. So there's a lot going on. You can get involved in every level. Yes, you got to clean your own house before you can clean anyone else's. It's good to start with yourself. There's great resources. There's Plastic Free July, where you have you can challenge yourself to becoming plastic free. And all of that is good, to really kind of get into that practice. But I do think that, this is beyond just individual change. There's a lot you can do and how much you want to participate, but there are also, our hands are tied a lot. A lot of our food is packaged in plastic and we get inundated with it. So wherever you could cut it down. Yes. And even for your own health, the more that we're learning, it is really fairly toxic. And you do want to try to eliminate as much plastic, especially with food, as much as possible. So again, with this, where it's accessible, it is going to be a local regional system where you get food that's more local to you. That makes it fresher, that makes the nutritional value higher, the money stays in your communities. So it's a win-win for everybody.
So many benefits.
Yeah, you don't need the packaging. So those are some of the things that, yes, and is broader, and don't feel like it's all on you. I mean, but it is, we need to hold these.
But it starts with you.
It starts with you, what you can do in your own life, but also really become active. And I always tell kids all the time, you have more power than you think. And the fact that we're using plastic for single use is a design flaw, and you can redesign your future. And your voice, you got to, stand up. I mean, for someone who basically barely voted, I never thought I'd be talking to the city council and getting involved like I did, but your voice really does matter. And it's, where you can, speak up, show up, speak and stand up to a lot of these things. And it does start on the local level to make these changes. And that's what's happening. And then that grows from there. It's like a pebble. I talk about like the pebble, and I feel like the last plastic straw, the little pebble coming, the waves coming out from Santa Cruz, but now they're coming back. I mean, it came out little ripples, and now it's coming back in waves.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, Jackie, thank you so much for being with us. I know that I've learned something, and just knowing you and listening to you has shifted my behavior, and I suspect it will for all those listening and who share this podcast. I want to thank you for being a guest, and I'd love to have you back.
Thank you. I'd love to be back, and I feel the same way about you, Susan. I really enjoy my time talking to you, and I look forward to more conversations. It's been great.
I want to thank you for taking this inner journey with us today. And whether you are coming or going, looking inside or out, remember to be conscious. If you love this episode, and if today's message resonated with you, please rate, subscribe, and review the Be Conscious podcast. I want to know what inspired you and what conscious topics you would like to hear more about. And if you'd like, you can share those thoughts with me at info@susannicholas.org.
Thanks for listening to the Be Conscious podcast with author, TEDx international speaker, and conscious coach, Dr. Susan Nicholas. Be sure to connect with her to stay up to date with her latest news and works. Learn more about her conscious speaking platform at susannicholas.org/speaking. Stay tuned for the next thought-provoking episode. And whether you are coming or going, looking inside or out, remember to be conscious.